Okay, hey everybody. So I just want to make a quick clip here. Since at last report, now it's upwards of 10,000 sealed indictments that are set to come down in the near future, which in all likelihood is going to include members of Congress, celebrities, MSM personalities, and executives around the country, among others. Now I mention these public positions because, well, it doesn't take a genius to figure out what industries have already been in the news for sexual assault, harassment, etc. Well, most, if not all, included in these indictments are involved in not only some shady dealings, but how about some immorally unethical, inhumane acts to boot? Allegedly, of course. Anyway, here's an unprecedented list of all the CEOs who have resigned in just the last few months, going back to September. Now, this list includes two of the more recent resignations being reported in way of Eric Schmidt of Google. Just to let you know, on the list, it's under the parent company, Alphabet. And another you might be familiar with is Papa John's CEO, John Schnatter. Now, the name may not sound familiar to you, but I'm sure you'll recognize the face because he does commercials for the NFL with former and active players like Peyton Manning and J.J. Watt, for instance. Now, don't believe the bogus reasons they're giving for his or any other's resignation for all these CEOs on the list. I mean, this is unprecedented, like I said, this list of the last few months of just CEO resignations. That does not happen every year or 10 years or what's a lifetime for that matter. Now, these executives most likely cut deals by giving up their handlers, allegedly, which is most likely why Barry and Honey Sherman of the Canadian Apotex pharmaceutical wealth were recently found hanged in their Toronto mansion together. That's a fact. Now, allegedly, they had ties to the Clinton Foundation in way of the 2010 Haiti heartquake, and the heartquake was created by a U-2 spy plane, according to Able Danger director Field McConnell, whom I tend to trust. And if you didn't already know, the Clintons tend to get rid of those loose ends who are considered expendable, allegedly. In any case, I've also heard that it could also be a contract hit from the big pharma patentees because they've been involved in some patent lawsuits apparently. But again, that's all allegedly. In any case, don't be surprised if you hear that execs on this list end up dead or by suicide or otherwise in the coming weeks. Now, their handlers will do anything to keep them quiet, allegedly, including starting a petition to impeach President Trump. Now, that's a fact. Who was arguably the first president that this country has ever had. In my opinion, that's a fact, compared to the deep state's typical puppet precedents of the United States before him. I also believe that's a fact. Now, it's just a shame that it'll be a short-lived presidential term by design, but it's been longer than expected. He was actually elected. Get that? Elected. Despite Hillary's attempt to steal it through Daddy Bush's failed tactics, allegedly, unlike previous general selections, allegedly. See a pattern yet? Allegedly. Now, next on the docket, so to speak, we will most likely start to see world leaders, as in prime ministers, presidents, and chancellors stepping down for one reason or another, including Trump, as I mentioned, and especially fake Jew Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, just read Revelations chapter 2, verse 9, and chapter 3, verse 9 to get a better understanding of what I'm speaking about in that regard. And as of today, I just heard that Castro's son is stepping down as president of Cuba. Wonder why. Maybe for the same reason these CEOs, perhaps? Anyway, remember, we have already seen a purge of royalty in Saudi Arabia. Well, that's a fact. Always follow the money. Now, some more very real news you won't hear on MSN anytime soon. The 5-year expiration date of the Federal Reserve began in the late fourth quarter of 2012. December 21st to be precise, and ended just a few days ago on December 21st. Now, this 2012 date is more well known as the end of the ancient Mayans long count calendar, a la the end of the world. It also happens to be the 99th year of the Federal Reserve Act. That was snuck into Congress on Christmas break on December 23rd, 1913. Now, those who actually voted for it knew most everyone wouldn't make it back in time to refute it, so voila, it went through without a hitch. And they tried to spin it as an early Christmas present for the country. Aw, how thoughtful of them, the gift that keeps on taking. Now, 1913 is also a year of after the Titanic had sunk, or rather was sunk. And if you'd already listened to segment 8 of my previous Awaken Secrets of the Dark Side series, you know why that is strongly tied to the Federal Reserve ever getting the charter in the first place. Anyhow, some people believe that control of the American economy was scheduled to end in 2013 because they believed there was a 100-year expiration date for said charter. This pleased most people who were of this belief because in order for the charter to be renewed, it would require not only a majority vote in both houses, Senate and House of Representatives of the U.S. Congress, but also a 3/4 majority vote by every one of their 50 state legislative bodies. And that just ain't going to happen in this day and age, especially with more and more people awakening to the crimes of our government, which when you break it down, govern equals control and ment equals mind. Control mind. Now, our government has committed against us in way of something called treason. Whoever says our country has a democracy clearly doesn't know the definition of the word. It means governed by the people, us. Now, does that seem accurate to you for what we're seeing? Not to me, at least in my 44 years of life, it isn't. But that's not the reason it won't happen. Now, what I'm about to tell you is the reason, the real reason. It has nothing to do with a non-existent 100-year charter expiration date because of the 1927 McFadden Act, where President Calvin Coolidge signed into law in 1927 February. Now, the act proactively recharted the 20-year limit in the initial charter of the Federal Reserve Bank into perpetuity. By that, perpetuity. Now that means continuously or everlasting or permanent or eternity. That's a long time. Okay, so how thoughtful of them again to think we want that forever. Enslave the people for eternity, even though we're a country of democracy. What a joke that is, for reasons already explained. Anywho, this liberalized branch bank rules revised a wide range of laws related to the treatment of banks that were not members of the Federal Reserve System. Now listen to this. The actual reason it won't continue is this. Knowingly, our own U.S. Congress secretly voted in favor of allowing a new private bank named the Federal Reserve, a la Fed, to print the emerging nation's physical money for our own United States Treasury. Now, this act of treasury was called the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, as previously mentioned, and the Fed alone would be allowed to have full global monetary authority over the rest of the world. Wow. Now, this blank check mentality that directly financed all of the current global monetary debt insanity humanity endures today, however, also during Bretton Woods 1944, the NATO alliance and the United States needed collateral to put up in order to launch their world domination plan. So they asked the Chinese Royal Red Dragon family, who agreed in the spirit of greater good vision for Reconstruction society in the age of the New World. It was the same Chinese Royal Red Dragon family who had also funded the American war against the British Empire in the late 1770s. And why to this day Americans still shoot off Chinese fireworks honoring their gifts every 4th of July. Bet you didn't know that, huh? So the Red Dragons agreed to lend their gold to the central bankers for a maximum 50-year period, ending in 1996, plus a 5-year transition or grace period, making the back wall return date, get this, September 11th, 2001. Remember what happened on that day? We'll never forget, right? And with this benevolent act, the global central banking system was born. allowing all good-standing sovereign nations to borrow redevelopment capital and or leverage through trade in order to rebuild their war-torn countries post-World War II. Now, to fully understand the amount of gold loaned to the free world by the Red Dragons, one must first understand that gold has been mined across Southeast Asia for over 5,000 years. And these 26 different factions of the Red Dragon families hoard, maintain, grow, and protect their assets with unparalleled commitment. They are the oldest race, if you didn't know that already. That's why they have elders and the dragon family. They go back thousands of years. Anyway, so when they agreed to lend their gold, albeit benevolently in favor of the greater good of humanity, they expected to get it back at some point in time. Of course, why wouldn't they? I would. I'm not giving it away. So the central bankers began leveraging the vaulted gold assets as early as in 1946 and began reconstruction societies worldwide. Now, this was the golden era for America, late 1940s to the mid-1960s. Growth and possibilities seemed endless in the USA. But sadly, ultimate power always corrupts ultimately. The central bankers decided to keep the gold for themselves and began devising a strategy to accomplish this evil end. So, they manufactured a few wars in Korea, Vietnam, Iran, Israel, Palestine, Lebanon, Bosnia, Kuwait, and Iraq. Then came 9/11, which led humanity down its current military and financial pathway into Afghanistan, Iraq again, Egypt, Syria, Israel and Palestine again, Libya, and finally Ukraine. Now, all of these wars were in directly response to giving the Red Dragons back their collateralizing assets to a rapidly defaulting central banking system. Now, this discrepancy built ahead when the Red Dragons demanded payment for the derivatives debts on Lehman Brothers in 2007 and insisted that their gold interest must be paid back. And what happened around that time, 2007, the housing market crash? Yeah, not a coincidence. But when Lehman could not pay off the debt, the USG declared a global financial emergency, borrowing $700 billion from its citizens in order to maintain repayment schedules negotiated by Federal Reserve Bank to the Red Dragon family. Now, as of March 1st, 2015, the Fed nor the United States of America Corporation, understand that? United States of America Corporation, founded in 1871 with the Organic Act of 1871, that just kind of swept the organic constitution under the rug, never to be heard from again until recently, hopefully when the Republic is restored. That's the goal anyway. Anyway, it has the liquidity left to satisfy its debt repayments and thus have turned over the USG to white knight military leaders within the US Pentagon, and they now run the country's affairs. This transition has quietly been rolling out going back to the fourth quarter of 2012. That's how we came to the 2012 December 21st date, and why it just expired 2017 December 21st a few days ago. Now, this is going to affect all Chinese dragon families and members of the Illuminati, including Rothschilds and the Cabal. Now, this is why, after a 5-year extension of sorts on December 21st of this year, the government shutdown was pushed off yet again until January 19th, 2018. And the included executive order found in the description that I've added was issued for the following. President Trump's executive order blocks property of persons involved in serious human rights abuse corruption. Does that sound familiar? Like child trafficking or any kind of trafficking, human trafficking, anything like that, maybe? Anyway, the president has now taken the next step to bring the international pedophilia corruption further into the light, and this corroborates why I believe those indictments are going to involve exactly what this EO describes. It's all coming to a head at the same time. Now, December 23rd marked the expiration date of any access the cabal / Illuminati, or whatever you want to call it, deep state, whatever, had to other countries in ground resources, to include all of, but not limited to, the USA, Africa, which is Oppenheimer, De Beers, Anglo-American, United Nations, etc. No more control over nations. Humanity is finally free! Yay! This is why the deep state wants President Trump dead. Plain and simple. And the MSM, helly weird, and Congress in general hate him and want him impeached, at the very least. And to prevent this from happening, like Daddy Bush did on 9/11, 2001. Allegedly. Now, I'm going to also include a link for Eric Schmidt and John Schnatter. And I mentioned I'm going to include the link for the executive order at whitehouse.gov. And another link that's going to explain the information that I just gave regarding the revaluation and the historical overview that I just went over with you. All right, well, all I have to say is, if not me, who? And if not now, when? Stay vigilant and fear no evil. God bless.